All right, guys, attention here. We got ourselves a little disclaimer. We've been cooking on this one for a little bit. Just for your understanding, viewers, the content presented to you is a lie, and the mainstream media always, and I mean always, tells the truth. COVID is true, and you should be a vegan. Those are just the best ways to live. Everything that Paul and Stoph say isn't real. Do not use these words against them because they really love being natural and all of the fat positivity movement. We love it. Also, Gymshark is the best company.
Please do not take this program seriously. Get your booster injection as soon as possible. Also, fitness advice from an obese person is completely factual and better than our advice. Only lift once a week for 10 minutes. Otherwise, you're being fat phobic. Viewer discretion is advised. All right, we can now get started.
Yeah, now that we're protected by law.
Yep, everything is protected now. We're good to go. Do not take any of this seriously.
We could say anything now.
We can. Fear our wrath. Fear our power.
Yeah.
Everything
Libs
goes.
Can't get us now.
But for today, you guys probably saw the title. Today's episode is going to be another influencer review. A lot of you guys seem to really like our influencer review videos, so I figured we can keep that up, keep you guys happy, keep you guys, keep talking about what you guys enjoy us talking about. And today's going to be someone we mention very frequently, especially myself, is going to be Derek from moreplatesmoredates.com. Believe it or not, we looked and looked and looked and could not find his fucking last name. So I don't know what it is.
His first name's Derek, and his last name's More Plates, More Dates. That's it.
Yeah. A lot of people say that he should change it from More Plates, More Dates to More Dishes, More Bishes.
Well, women can compete just like men in the Olympia.
Yep.
So
always. But yeah, he's got a lot of traction over the past couple of years, especially. I started listening to him probably, or watching his content probably like 2019, 2020, something like that. And then more religiously, probably like 2021, once I started touching anabolics, because that's a lot of what he talks about is anabolics. So I started watching him a lot more, like beginning in 2021. And then December 2021, his first episode on Joe Rogan podcast came out, and that really skyrocketed him. And ever since then, about once a year in December every year, he's done a podcast episode with Joe Rogan. So
it seems
it's good to see him on that.
Yeah, it seems like whenever someone has like a big fitness question or something to do with, longevity or anything like that, you either pull up a More Plates, More Dates video or an Andrew Huberman video. that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Doucette's also pretty up there. He's been getting a lot more frisky. Greg Doucette's gotten a lot more risky and frisky with his content, especially on Instagram.
No.
Yeah, no. Yeah, he was attacking. He did something about how I think it was like women with their body count or something. He's like, ladies, if your body count is high, no guy's gonna want you. He's like, because guys' body counts aren't high typically, or something like that. Like he was just like
him.
He really actually did talk about that.
No, that doesn't sound like him. You got it.
Oh, ladies, your body count is too high. But he did talk about that, and then it was something about like being obese
abstinence
or something.
Leads to gains.
The less time you come, the more testosterone you have.
That's a real thing. People really think that, though.
I mean, there's been studies done, and it's like the studies that have been done have shown that like post ejaculation, your testosterone plummets, but that it almost immediately goes straight back up. Like it's like it's basically like during the duration of post nut clarity that your testosterone is low. That's pretty much it. And then it's right after that's right back up. And there have been studies done. We talked about it, I think, in November. No, not November. There have been studies done where like there was a slight increase during a serious bout of a lack of ejaculation, and it was like negligible data that really showed that like maybe there's a slight increase in testosterone overall, but it's hard to say. It was like it's there's not enough data to really show that this is true. And again, even if it is true, it's like marginally more. And we're also talking like a lower quality of life too. So it's like you're really not getting much benefit out of it by
Yeah.
living a much lower quality life. And I know that sounds dumb, especially if you're a woman listening to this, but like it's how men are biologically built. We're supposed to be able to impregnate many women at once. That's how we were built. That's why we can ejaculate multiple times a day, and women can only give birth once every 40 weeks or whatever the exact number is. Obviously, it varies, but that it's for that reason. And I like it theoretically, if it came down to it, if we had to choose less men or less women, we would survive better with less men, at least as far as like future generations goes, because we can give birth to many kids at once versus women. So because of that, we have a much more of a need to ejaculate more often than women need to get pregnant often. Sex obviously is enjoyable for women, but it's not quite the same as it is for men. And there's a bit from Louis C.K. where he's like, women would be like, I'm just as horny as a guy is. And she's like, he said something about how the same lady was like, you don't know what's going on in my head. I have some dirty thoughts. And he's like, no, lady, you have no fucking idea what goes on in guys' heads. No idea. And I was cracking up. I'm like, this shit we think about sometimes is so fucked. Like, we probably break laws in our heads. And it's like, that's not okay. We don't act on them, but it's like a lot of guys, like you could say, there's a video I saw recently that was so accurate. You could say basically anything and say guys jerk off to it, and every single guy would probably be like, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Like,
there's one dude you talk about how like stuff in our heads, and there's one dude who always lets it out, and that's Theo Von. His intrusive thoughts always win.
Yeah, that's his just style of comedy in general. It's always his intrusive thoughts. And it's like he's gotten so deep. Like he's been around and doing it for so long. It's like, is this a bit or is this just who he is? But
Yep.
I really do think it is a bit, because when it is time to get serious, he is very serious. And he's like, because of that, he's one of the best people to have around when times do get serious. Because there's clips on, like, I think he has a podcast where like it gets serious when he has other comedians on who went through something rough, and like Theo like cuts the act and just like comforts him. Because like there's one guy who is, I forget who it was, and he just had a really rough childhood, and he just started like kind of breaking down a little bit and started crying a bit, and Theo was like basically like comforting him. So it's like I respect the hell out of Theo Von for that reason. He's funny when he needs to be, and when he doesn't need to be funny and just needs to listen and be there for someone, he is. So he seems like a really good guy to have around. But
and
with all that
speaking
being
of good things to have around, Derek for More Plates, More Dates content.
Yeah, Derek's Death Star Delts. His so he used to be very heavy in bodybuilding. I believe he also used to compete amateur, that is. He never really went pro. Originally his content was about bulking and different diets and stuff like that. Like there was like different, like if you look back at his oldest videos, they were posted 7 years ago. So we're talking like 2015-ish, maybe 2016, something like that. Just because it says 7 years, it might be closer to 8 years, but YouTube says 7 years when you're looking at it. Like 2 of his first 6 videos were most complimented fragrances and comparing 2 different fragrances from Dolce & Gabbana. So like it was stuff. Yeah, I mean, his first 5 videos were all fitness related, or how to be attractive, I guess. And then episodes, or his 6th video and his 7th video were about fragrances. So he talked about how like the original idea. So he talks about fragrances quite frequently, actually. How make your fragrance / clone last twice as long. Best creative Ventus clone CLONE. So he had various videos just talking about fragrances, which I totally understand. For those that don't know, I do collect fragrances. I haven't had the money to spend on them in a long ass time, but I do collect them. I have like about 30 right now, and have had the same 30 for the longest time. But it really is like an addiction, because it's like it's like wine or whiskey or cigars. Like it's like you build up like this hobby around it, and it's like you taste it, like you smell. It's not a taste test, but like you smell things in stores, and it gets addicting, you know. And that's
When I
kind of where
went
he
down
started.
when I went down to Paul's wedding last year, we had the scene from Anchorman where he
Yeah,
opens up the cabinet. This one's called Sex Panther. Got real bits of panther in it.
60% of the time it works every time.
I
That
don't
doesn't
I
make
don't
any
think that
sense.
works.
So that's how we got started originally, and he's talked about how like a lot of his original content was focused on like helping guys get chicks and shit. And that was like his like what he felt was going to be his niche. And you know, he did one of his bigger videos back in the day that like kind of skyrocketed was he had a fragrance battle, is what he called it, where he would go around Vancouver, Canada, which is where he lives or lived. I don't know where he's at now at this point, but he had women smell Spice Bomb, Dior Sauvage, and Jean Paul Gaultier Ultramall. And which one would they pick of those three? Because those three are considered like some of the really good, what's called blue fragrances, which is like mass appealing. So it's supposed to smell good to a lot of women. So like that got 500,000 views, and that's kind of what skyrocketed his channel originally. And then he talks about getting shredded and getting big, you know, from
It's
bulking
basically
and best diets.
it's basically the like literally just the aesthetic side of lifting and living.
Yeah. It's not about bodybuilding really. It's about like all of this in conjunction with life, like to get women and shit, right? So
It's like when
um
you're in school and you're learning a topic and the kid always goes, "How does this apply to real life?" His channel is literally, "How do I make this applicable?" Like that, anything you do, how do I make it applicable? At
yeah,
least
basically.
the early.
Yeah, so it was from my understanding, it was less about the in-depth content. It was more about like applying it, like you were saying. Like that's exactly what it kind of was. But then he ended up finding, like, it took a while to really find his niche. Like that's a lot of it too. Like a lot of content creation is about finding your niche and like where you fit into the actual like market of your knowledge. And for Derek, it definitely kind of really manifesting when he started talking a lot more about anabolics and SARMs and you know, hair loss hair loss prevention, hair gain protocols, stuff like that. So like I started watching him prior around the time he really started talking about a lot of SARMs and shit. Um, and then you know, talking about different steroid cycles of different actors and stuff. And like this is where he's really starting to take off at this point. Like few 100,000 views probably per video on average. So this is probably like 2019 getting into 2020. See, I remember watching this. He tried mewing, it didn't really fucking do anything. The real point of a testosterone base, stuff like that. So like that's where he really found his niche. Was like at the time there wasn't really a ton of people talking about steroids, and this is, we're talking like 4 years ago. Like this is still like really fresh. Um, and it's just recently, past couple of years, really starting to get a lot more transparent, which is good to see, because in one way it's, you know, we've talked about it before. In one way, it's good to know what people are taking, and it's good to know like what the realistic standards are for those that are natural and those that are not natural. But then at the same time, because there's so much more readily available information, we have a lot more bullshit, like people who think they can write their own cycles, and people who think they should be taking something, like they trust all this. Like it's a different forum for bro science is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Like that's why I say a lot of what we talk about is anecdotal. This is, you know, we're not experts, we're not endocrinologists. This is just what we've seen. This is what I've experienced with my usage, and
everything
that
we say
nobody
is a
should.
lie.
Yeah, everything we say is a lie. And nobody should ever take any of it seriously and not actually apply it to themselves. This is just what I've seen and what I've experienced. But like now it's all these guys are like talking about like, oh, HCG versus HMG, for instance. But they're talking about the differences, but then people will take it as like, this is what I should take instead of this. Or like, this is what he says to do, so I should do this. But he's just using, you know, that video just be like about examples or just comparing a direct comparison. So with Derek, one of the things that he does do which is huge on his platform, is he talks about like horror stories from like steroid use and stuff. He did talk about his own like really bad cycles that he's done. I think he had a really bad one with testosterone and just a shit ton of D-ball. So he, he talked about that steroid cycle and basically how he just got like super fat because he was just dirty bulking, which is covered in acne. And at the time he was a bouncer, so he, he wasn't super active. He kind of like leaned into like that bouncer role
the
a bit.
stereotype.
Yeah, exactly. And just was like, let's just see how big I could get. And he just was full of water. And he talked about how like basically every single day he get a nosebleed because the D-ball was just increasing his blood pressure that much. And on top of that, like he got Deca from it. He wasn't taking Deca at the time, but he talked about how like he basically had to pop like a Cialis just to fucking get it up because his blood pressure was such shit. On top of that, like he couldn't even like really hit anything that was a compound movement because his back would get such a pump. Because that's one of the side effects of D-ball with so much blood flow is that your back gets so pumped up, like it's almost painful. You get such a back pump. And I have gotten, not from D-ball or T-ball, I've taken T-ball, not D-ball. I haven't taken D-ball, but I have gotten a back pump where it was so gnarly, I was actually worried about it. I think it was my first week on Tren. It was master on Tren and test. Those are my prep. And after the first movement, I pushed it really hard in the first movement because I didn't realize how good it was feeling because of Tren. Like it genuinely felt so good to train. I was just pushing it really hard. And I got up and my back felt like I was going to fucking rip my shirt and I was going to pop a blood vessel or something. Like I was like, this does not feel right. It was really crazy to feel, but then I decided to start taking it easier on back days. But that's what he talked about. He was like, the back pump was so crazy, he couldn't even like do curls because his back pump stabilizing him, like his back stabilizing him would pump up super hard.
Yeah.
I'm like, that does not sound fun. So he talked about that. He talked about, he's talked about like a lot of like trend stories because there's quite a few Reddit posts on his Reddit and stuff about like crazy trend cycles and what it did to them mentally and their relationships and stuff. And I think a lot of that's kind of like added to the, like, I guess a little bit of fear, but also put it way more into perspective for people, like how Trend got the name relationship destroyer, because it really is. And a lot of the stories that he talks about, yeah, they're only like, a few stories out of however many thousands of guys have taken Trend, but it exacerbates a lot of who you are as a person, and it makes a lot of guys very violent. And not really like physically abusive, but like very, very, very irritable, very angry. So like he talked about what these stories did to, these stories and what happened to these guys and all that. And, they'll lose relationships and they start cheating and they get paranoid because they think their girl's cheating on them, even though while they're cheating on their girl because their girl can keep up with their sex drive, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty crazy. But there's also ones about acne too. I don't know if you've seen any of those stuff, but the ones with the acne results from steroid use is fucking crazy.
I haven't seen it directly from him, but what I do notice, like when I'm watching like going through reels or like on TikTok or whatever, and a fitness influencer will pop up and they're talking about their natural cycle and then they're doing like a back lat spread and it's just acne. And I'm like, well, don't think you're very natural, sir.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the acne side of things, he talks about how in a lot of cases there is, where you might not be that, covered in acne or anything like that. Like I almost have very, very little acne, even with steroids, which is great. Yeah, I just have no hair now. My head has like no hair. That's why I always wear hats because it's a lot thinner than it was. You can see it on my scalp, and that's just part of steroid taking. And I know there are things that I could take like DHT or anti-DHT shampoos and shit.
You're also genetically disposed to it, so
yeah. There's a lot of balding in my family. My dad was bald. But granted, my beard has gotten only thicker and longer the more steroids I take, honestly. I'll be taking like tests or whatever, and it's just fucking poof. It's just down in like a month. So whatever I get from my beard, I wish I could put on my head, but I can't. So anyways, yeah, I wish you could just like flip it. But he talks about, hair protocols and stuff, because that was one of his problems, was losing hair on testosterone or just gear in general. And a lot of guys who lose hair, a lot of guys in general can't quite grow like a super thick or solid beard. So when you're losing your hair, you're going to end up, shaved and bald for a lot of guys. So he was talking about different protocols for hair and hair loss and all of that. Plus the acne side of things, because at one point Derek did have to take, I think he said Accutane, to like get his acne down. And the thing about Accutane is it's very, very harsh on your skin. So it really dries you out, which is the point. It's supposed to like dry you the fuck out and make all of your acne kind of go away. And it's really harsh on your body. But then when you're done, you're done. He has like almost no acne now. And like theoretically, you could take like smaller doses of Accutane over time, and it will keep your acne down, but it'll keep your skin pretty dry constantly, and it'll never fully go away. It's kind of like it's either you take it all at once and be done with it, or you do it slowly over time and never truly be done with it, but it's not nearly as harsh over time, So it's like, do you want to get it done, kind of suffer for a little bit, for a few months, and then be done, or take it for years and always have it be a problem, but it's not nearly as bad, not even close to as much suffering as it would have been during those few months. And speaking of which, Stoph, did you chop your locks off?
No, I have it tied back right now.
Oh, okay.
But the challenge is in place for my students. So
right, I thought that was ending this week. I thought the challenge was ending this week.
No.
Okay.
I'm grading their essays on, Monday is the due date, so all next week, and so by Friday we'll know.
All right. So next episode, you guys see us.
The actual
maybe.
The actual appointment, because I have running appointments scheduled out for split ends and whatnot. So that's going to be the 16th. The 16th is the next scheduled appointment. Okay. So
and that's
whatever
happens if your students get that result from their tests that the challenge is. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. I thought it would have been in this week. So when I saw you, I couldn't see your hair. I was like, that's right, he did chop it off. But then because the challenge,
I've been intentionally wearing it up more just because I want to get more and more used to the look. Like especially I wear this hat like no other hat. Like this hat alone, probably like 99% of my regular hat wearing. So I'm just getting used to the look of not seeing, and also like I'll get that cleaned up, but like not having the look of hair behind me.
Gotcha. I was thinking about the other day. I was like, man, I can't believe I grew my hair as long as I did.
Yeah,
like it still blows my mind to think about it.
And so it brings into an interesting question for like your genetics and then your cycles. What it would look like if you still had your long hair, if it would be stringy and like missing pieces, like when guys have like hair that they're trying to hold on. Oh, great example, Paul Heyman from the WWE. He just has his hair around here and up until. Look up Paul Heyman from the early 2000s. He wears it in a ponytail, and it's just the hair like surrounding on his head.
Okay, so ew.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I'm about to share my screen for you guys in a sec. So you guys can see it
now he doesn't have it as a ponytail, and it's just the hair around, but that's what I think of when guys try and hold onto hair when when they're just desperately
like this
trying.
Shit, like,
yeah, yep,
or like it's starting to go here. It's getting there.
Yeah, now he has it, short like that, but he used to wear that hairstyle tied back, and it was wild.
Whoops.
So
I didn't mean to stop sharing, but it's all right. That's wild. Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, it's still pretty obvious that I had issues with like my hairline specifically, because like the goal I was going for was basically like Ragnar Lothbrok's hair. So like I was going to keep growing it and then put it up in like hair ties basically, and have it be like one long thick strand kind of going down the middle of my back. But have it kind of coming from like the top of my head mostly.
Yeah.
So not quite like Kai Green, nothing like that, but like a long kind of ponytail that's kind of like kept tight. against itself. And my hair was so thick, I could definitely do it. But like my hairline just never agreed with me. So like a lot of the hairstyle I was trying to go for relied on a better hairline than I had. And that was what was so difficult for me. Plus, I also have a widow's peak too. Like I didn't realize it growing up, but because my hair was kind of on the longer side.
Mine's poking
Yeah,
through.
mine. It's kind of like it's not as noticeable now because my hairline's receding. So like, here's my hairline for you.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like receding, it's not as obvious. But when my hair was more straight, as far as like the length, and it wasn't so like thin as it is now, the widow's peak was a lot more obvious. So I'd keep that shaved. And that was a bitch to like, because eventually my hair was so long, I was like, I really just got to stop shaving my widow's peak. So I started growing that out, and that was hard to fucking get everything back together because that would stick out, and that was annoying. So I'd have to put a little bit of gel to keep it pulled back, and it was such a pain to deal with. And then also my beard, like it just wasn't growing the way I wanted it to grow, because like it would, like my beard now grows a lot better now, so I comb it a lot more. But back then, like this, for some reason, this shit would stick out like here, and because like this was growing thicker than everything else, and like this was a little bit thinner than it is now, so my beard was almost like it was like
Mutton chops.
all one length. Yeah, one length, and then like this shit was just sticking out. Like that shit sucked. But like looking back, I was like, oh, I got this sick ass beard, blah blah blah. But now I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like my beard now can actually like look relatively straight. I just gotta get the sides done, and my wife does want me to buzz it down, which I will do. But anyways, that's my hair issue. I know there's a lot of things that I could do to help with my hair. You know, DHT shampoo. A lot of like the stuff that keeps cells is actually pretty decent. It's expensive, but it's a really good alternative to like getting a hair transplant or something like that, which actually Sebum and Ian Vier both did. Was they got a hair transplant, which I don't know if you guys saw on social media, but it's actually pretty wild looking, because I don't know where they get the hair or not, but they basically, it almost looks like you have like you almost like
a red line.
You're like a doll. It kind of looks like a doll with its head shaved. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, if it's like when you have like I'm gonna make the football reference because it's what I see now because it's NFL season. But when someone wears a football helmet, it's like too tight for their head, and they take it off, and they have the line on their forehead.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, or like a hat. You got like a tight hat on or something.
Yep.
And he also talked about how like apparently he couldn't train for 6 weeks or something because of it, or something like that. Like he had to he couldn't exercise. I don't know if it was because of sweat, like he couldn't sweat. I don't know what the case was, but he said that he couldn't train for a while. And I'm sure you can't wear hats or anything to cover it up. I'm sure. So like you kind of just look wonky for a while, but it ends up being worth it. A good example of that is Elon Musk. Early 2000s, Elon had like no hair, but his hair now is like thick and healthy. And that's just because of hair transplant. So if you can afford it, it works. You know, the technology's come a long way. I remember back like 20 years ago, hair transplants were like just kind of starting out, and they weren't really that effective.
Would wear toupees.
Exactly. But now it's like actually really effective if you can afford it. There is a lot of protocols out there for hair and stuff like that. Ketoconazole shampoo, which is like anti-DHT shampoo. And a lot of the reason I do lose my hair is because of DHT derivatives. You know, Anavar is one of them. I believe Mastron is one of them. Tren is not. That's a 19-nor. But you know, there's a lot of things you can do to help with your hair, and I just got to really just spend the money to do it. At the same time, I wish my wife just liked it when my hair was short, because if I could, I'd just buzz my hair all the time, like keep it at like a few like maybe 1 or 2 millimeters at any given time, where it's not quite bald, but it's like super short. That's how I like it. And then growing out a long beard. That's what I'd want, but she's not on board. She would not. She's never on board with that.
I'll send you a package of just hair, and it'll be after to the haircut.
Yeah, they're like, oh, do you want to donate your hair? You're like, I already am donating it to Paul Garney. You just ship it to me, and I just got a box of hair. I did when I cut mine off, I did donate mine because I did chop off over 12 inches.
Yeah, mine's not going to be that long.
Yeah, it didn't look that long, but it was that long just because mine was so curly. So it wasn't nearly as obvious. Let me see if I can find like a photo. of me with longer hair. I could probably just pull up my Facebook real quick. But it's pretty wild. Every time I show somebody it, they're like, "What? That's what you used to look like?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's just how it was." Let me see. All right, I just got to log in. But yeah, so back to Derek. He talks a lot about like different cycles that he's seen. Obviously, like the horror stories and all of that. And then he see profile photo. I bet you I could just scroll. Yeah, it's probably somewhere. There's one somewhere. Yeah, a lot of the ones where my hair is long. Yeah, I don't really like any of them. I'll find one for you guys. But yeah, so Derek is a great source of truth or source for like anabolics training, stuff like that. I've been following him for a while, but
something that Derek does too that is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's not common because it's more and more so the case, but something that he does like religiously is that he pulls all the articles and will cite everything. And like, if you're in the podcast, you can go into the details and find like the source material. If you're watching like the screen while he does it, he'll like present it while he's talking. Like it's very like, he's not just presenting what he learns. Like he does have his own anecdotal, like we talked about, but then he has all of this like whatever has been studied, excuse me, like whatever's been studied, he puts it out there. And of course that's where his expertise comes in, because there's a lot of stuff that is just refused to be tested, or like the FDA is like non-anecdotal for anabolics is just key. But all of the other stuff he talks about, like a lot of his nutrition stuff, so much of his nutrition stuff is backed by just like dozens of research articles.
There's also like a joke kind of something to keep in mind too, is that you almost have to like, in order to really understand what he's talking about, you have to understand what he's talking about. Like there's a lot of terminology that he uses that it takes a while to really understand what it means. There's some basic stuff that he'll say, like super physiological anabolics instead of steroids. He'll talk about testosterone or DHT derivatives, stuff like that. But then he'll get into like just a ton of just super in-depth terminology where like I can't really say it off the bat, but I can understand it when he says it. It's kind of like another language almost when you're talking about hormones and all of that. It's just like any medical field where when you talk about the scientific names of things, it really becomes like its own language in a way,
Yeah.
And that goes for a lot of things too. Like I work in IT sales and in cybersecurity, and we almost speak our own language, So learning the terminology and learning the vocabulary for a lot of what Derek shares and teaches and preaches is its own like thing you got to learn how to do over time, is in order to fully understand it, to fully like take in all the knowledge that he has to offer. So it does take a while to really get into his content, and you might not understand it right away, but the more you learn, the better it gets. But this is also not the case for a lot of guys. A lot of guys in bodybuilding and all that could not care less about the science behind anything. They just would rather just be done with it, just do what works for them and just be done with it and do what the coach says, all that, So when you are trying to actually learn about it, Derek is one source. We are another source as well. We try to be best of a source as we possibly can for you guys without being endocrinologists or being majored in sports nutrition or whatever the case may be. But Derek, I don't even know. I don't think he's majored in anything like that either. Maybe sports nutrition, maybe. But I'm not even sure what his college experience is. I know he went to college. I just don't know for what. But what he's smart with when it comes to business is that he's a businessman.
Yeah, he's got a bachelor in business administration.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, business administration is fine. Huh?
I thought I got his last name, but it's a different Derek.
Oh, okay. Business administration is fine when it comes to the internal side of a business, but not quite the marketing or sales side of things. That's kind of what administration is. It's just the internal stuff. There's business management, which is more so like a little bit of both internal and external. But then there's marketing, which is what I majored in, which is more the external stuff and selling and how to market your product, stuff like that. With that being said, he's smart because he's a businessman at heart. And the reason I say that is because, like, for instance, Merrick Health, we know that Merrick Health is owned by Derek, but the actual face of Merrick Health is the doctor, Dr. Merrick. And he's the one who like writes prescriptions and analyzes, the different programs for people, stuff like that. So like he has a doctor that does it, and then like his supplement company is based out of Idaho, I think. And then also they have another location in Texas, I think, for like shipping. But he lives in Canada, so he only visits every so often. So like he has people running these companies and making these formulas and stuff like that, while he just kind of provides the capital, I believe. And it's also because of his platform. It's very easy for him to make a lot of sales by just mentioning it.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, because of his content, he has to hold up a very high quality product. So everything he's going to provide. He did like a 2.5 hour fucking deep dive into his energy drink and the idea behind it and the formulation and all of that. And then like his pre-workout, like Gorilla Mode and all that, his nootropics and everything, like he's dove into each of those in a whole video and the idea behind them. And like I said, like the ingredients, the formulation, all that. And so you just know he has to hold up this high quality standard. And by making these videos, he's getting sales, like that's why social media is so big. If you have millions of followers, you just talk about something and you'll get sales no matter what. Even if it's not a ton, you'll still sell something just by posting about it.
We got a decent
so
amount
that's
of
why
people.
it's huge.
We got a decent amount of people in the classroom who say when they grow up they want to be an influencer of some kind.
The number one career, there's a study done, the number one career kids say they want to do now is be a YouTuber. That's the most common career. It's not astronaut, it's not firefighter, it's not police officer, nothing like that. The number one by far is YouTuber.
Yeah. Wild.
It's becoming its own thing, which is
like
crazy.
Obviously there's a need for it, but if too many people back away from the jobs that make America, we're gonna fall apart. But that's too related to that's a side rant.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's a reason Derek got big. Yeah, there's 500 hours of videos uploaded every minute on YouTube.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's a ton. So the need isn't there. It's finding a niche. It's fitting your individual, your niche and staying consistent with it. And that's what Derek was able to do. He posted a bunch of random content, which is what a lot of YouTubers do originally, and then never gains traction. They quit. But you talk to any YouTuber who's successful, and they'll say like first 3-4 years, even they don't get any views, but they kept doing it, and eventually they found what worked for them and what was getting views, and just kept going with that, regardless of whether or not they wanted to do it. It's just what their fans were enjoying. But now we're at the point too where, I mean, Derek doesn't do this, but we're at the point now too where it's not even just like YouTube content creation. It's like you stream it and then just clip it for YouTube.
Yep.
It's like streaming is the platform, YouTube is the byproduct. But for a lot of streamers, one of the ones that I watch very religiously for business stuff is Atrioc. And he talked about how streaming is like his primary form of content creation, but YouTube is actually where he makes all of his money. Yeah. Even though it's the byproduct of streaming. It's like he just has an editor that clips from his streams, the good stuff, post it to YouTube, and that's what makes him his money, even though streaming he's very popular. But Derek was able to build everything just off of YouTube itself. A little bit of social media, but I don't even know if I follow his Instagram. I think I do, but it's not often that he posts. It's just his YouTube really that he posts to, and he doesn't post too often anymore. He's got so much going on with his businesses now. He doesn't post as nearly as often as he used to, which I miss a lot. I miss it a lot. His like weekly content and shit, but now it's like he posts like once a month or something. So it's a shame, but it is what it is. Here's my.
You mentioned that you mentioned that he did do some bodybuilding. Do we have any kind of?
There you go.
I don't know, show photos. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's down. That's up. And I think I took this right before I went to get my hair cut. I'm pretty sure. So it's all super curly. So when you actually cut this off, or like if I were to take a shower and brush it, it would literally be down to like the middle of my back.
Yeah.
Like past my upper back. But it's just curly, so it doesn't look nearly as long as it is. But you can even see here, like there's still a bit of like a hairline issue. You can see it here too. You see how it comes out right here?
Yeah.
So like there is still a hairline issue prior to ever taking anabolics, prior to ever really going into the gym super hard. I got all this cut off for work because they said I needed to, but I didn't really end up not needing to. So this is like I don't even know, maybe like March 2020, I think.
Hmm.
It took me about 2 years, I think, to grow all this, which really isn't too bad in the grand scheme of things. I think I chopped this off in March because they're like, oh yeah, we need you to chop it all off. We need short hair and, trim beard and clean cut and all that. It's like, all right, fine. So I chopped it all off. Fucking boom, COVID. Never needed to chop it off really because we were remote at that point ever since, and I've only been remote ever since.
Yeah.
So like it was kind of useless, but it is what it is. Anyways, go ahead. What were you saying?
I was just saying if you have anything on his bodybuilding. I know he stayed amateur, but if we have anything like
Yeah.
show wise on him.
Let me see if I could find something because I mean, I know he was like, why are you not going to another screen? I know that he was like, let me see, Derek. I know he was taking cycles and all that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, if he even stepped on stage.
Yeah, like it's never really said, I don't think, what shows he competed in. Why are you not going to a new window? What is happening right now? There we go. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I just need it on my second monitor so I can still talk to you. He One of his most popular photos was just, I think, just when he was in a harsh cut.
I was gonna say you got to put the iconic picture.
Yeah, so he's got with the pink stringer.
Hmm.
He does have like some of the worst ab genetics ever, which he did work on and improve upon, I believe, but he never had the best abs. It's just the way his abs are shaped. So like here, I'll show you guys. If you guys are watching, I'll show you. Let me see. There we go. So like there's his abs right there. Not the best abs by any means, right?
Yeah.
It's just that his ab insertions in general were just not good. It's not that he wasn't lean enough. Like he was more than lean enough to have his abs protruding by a long shot, but he didn't have the ab insertions. There's also this photo right here. So like they look fine here from the side.
Well, ready?
Kind
Click on
of.
the stringer picture right next to it, and then
Yeah.
click on the exploded shoulders one underneath. Like, look, no, to the right where it gives the. No, go back to the picture you're just on. And now,
This?
if it pops up more results under the pictures.
Oh.
Yeah, that one.
That's what he looks like when he's like on YouTube, the way he records his videos and all that. That's what he looks like. His fucking shoulders are crazy. But it's just he just has a shit ton of androgens in his delts, so
Yeah.
his delts are just crazy. That's just from anabolic usage. Like not even just training. Like you can train and get really good delts, but anabolics will seriously take your delts to the next level no matter where you're at. Just because there's so many androgen receptors. It's like, look at that. Like no pump, nothing. Just absolute fucking Death Star delts, right?
Yeah.
That's just part of taking anabolics in general. Um, that's why a lot of guys talk about taking their first cycle. They're like, I just want to have good delts. And I'm like, it's basically what ends up happening. My problem is that it's a ton of it goes to my glutes. My delts have grown a lot from anabolics, but a lot of it went to my glutes, especially because that's what I use to pin is my glutes. Again, this is all lies, guys. None of it's true. You're fat phobic. A
Yeah.
lot of it went to my glutes just from pinning in my glutes. So I pin in my delts anytime I can, but my body does not agree with it. Anything more than like a third of a millimeter in my delt fucking kills for like a day. I think I tried the trend, which was already suspended in relatively thick liquid, but I tried the trend, which is I think 3.33 milliliters, I think is what I was doing, or something like that. I forget what it was. I think it was something like that. It was 0.33 milliliters or something. And I pinned that and my delt was fucking wrecked for like 3 hours. I could not move my arm. It burned so bad. But for a lot of guys, I know quite a few guys off the top of my head who pin almost exclusively in their delts. or their lats, and they just have fucking crazy delts. That's part of the reason why. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that Derek probably pinned in his delts. I'm sure.
And naturally, I have really good delts, so I'm curious to see what mine would explode to if I ever pinned.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't really matter. Like where you pin can influence it, but even
Well,
if
I
you didn't
just
pin your
mean
delts, it still blows them up.
that's what I mean. I just mean pinning in general,
Yeah.
not
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um even like lower dose anabolics and all that will still play a big role. And that's one thing I do like about Derek is that a lot of what he preaches is like anti like high dosage and bashing on bro science shit. Like he talked about how like when he was on gear, he's just been on TRT for years now, like at least 3-4 years now. But he's talked about how when he was really on gear, there's a lot of bro science shit, a lot of forums, nobody was talking about it. So like the bare minimum you do for tests is like 500 milligrams because according to bro science, that was like the base. That was like the minimum you did for tests. Otherwise, it just wasn't worth it. You didn't do more, you didn't do less. Like that was what you did. You did 500 milligrams of test no matter what else you were hitting. Plus like Masteron, and a lot of guys were taking like test and Deca and D-ball at the same time. It's like, geez, dude, how many testosterone derivatives do you want to fucking take? Like you're gonna have man tits in like a week. Because all that shit aromatizes, and I mean not Deca. Deca doesn't aromatize. That's why it's a lot of people argue it's better for TRT, but like test and D-ball aromatize like crazy. You just hold on to a lot of weight and get gyno out the fucking wazoo, which is something else I want to actually do at some point. Is I want to get gyno surgery and just get that whole fucking gland just fucking snipped right off and never have to worry about it again. That's one of my worst side effects. It's just
Is that a
gyno. I
expensive
hate
process?
I think it's like a couple grand. Let me see. I know someone who got it. I know a couple guys who got it done. Gynecomastia surgery. It says the average is just under $5,000. It depends on where you go.
Probably insurance
Like
based too.
it's not insurance based because gynecomastia surgery is entirely cosmetic.
Okay.
There's nothing actually wrong with you when you have gyno, like as a man. There's technically nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, it's
It
just
doesn't
the
affect your body.
stage look and stuff like that.
Yeah, it just doesn't look good. It's painful because we're not supposed to have inflamed glands. Yeah, see, like this one's saying about 4,000 is the average cost. This one's saying 4,200. This one's saying it ranges everywhere from 7,700 to 18,000, but that's also Los Angeles. So it just entirely depends on where you go. But the healing for it too is really not bad. It's like they pull it all out. What the doctor should be doing is removing the whole gland. And if they don't, then you should fucking sue them for malpractice because that's like saying like that's like removing like getting surgery to remove a tumor, but they only leave like a little bit. Like, oh, you're fine, just a little bit. It's fine. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, the whole point is to get rid of it. You're gonna leave the whole gland. If you're leaving the gland in there, it's gonna come right back. So you get the whole thing removed. They just basically cut open your nipple, pull it out. Essentially, they just cut it out and then just sew your nipple back up. Like I'm sure you could even be like awake for most of it, to be honest. If you just didn't like, I wouldn't mind being awake and just like having it numbed and just having them pull it out while I'm awake. But I mean, if I could, I'd get, knocked out for it. At least that way I don't have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is something eventually to get done, at least for me. He has talked about like gyno and all of that, just because a lot of his viewers have gyno issues.
And until then, you blast trend.
Yeah, exactly. But because he's talked to like Andrew Huberman and stuff, Andrew's a very similar like group of fan base, and Andrew on Joe Rogan's podcast is pretty good. He's way more on the holistic side of things and good. He's very much of a proponent, very much of a like person that like promotes good sleep, a lot of water, cold showers, sauna usage, stuff like that. Time away from screens, like just really just general health. One thing that he has talked about with gyno that I think Derek has talked about as well. He talked about, I think this particular clip was how prolactin affects a lot of guys' gyno, not just estrogen. And that was my problem. It's not estrogen, it's the prolactin.
Yeah.
Which I think it might be actually my issue right now is prolactin buildup, to be honest. Like that's why I'm losing so much muscle but holding onto my fat. It's because of prolactin. I almost guarantee it. But yeah, that plays a role. And Derek talks about it because gyno is the issue for a lot of guys, and every guy gets different side effects, but his was always hair loss and acne. But he hasn't touched it in years, so he can't really test anything that's current or anything that's newer as far as fighting the side effects and shit.
Yeah, he's definitely taken a backseat to, the training intensity and how hard he was going with his usage and everything. It's just like, I think that's kind of like the natural progression too. I'm not calling him old by any metric, but he's older than he was. So it's more so just, once you find your groove and you're not like, he knows that whenever he stopped taking, the amounts that he was taking before, he knew he wasn't going to make it pro for bodybuilding. And unless you are making money on your physique, which he wasn't, there's no need to do it. He was making money on his content, which was his knowledge. So there's no real reason to keep it going.
Yeah, just given his ab genetics alone, he was going to be way, way fucking down the line as far as like competing goes. No matter how big or lean he got, his midsection alone would just get destroyed on stage. And it's a damn shame because that's not something you can really help. Like a big part of bodybuilding in general that a lot of people don't talk about is muscle insertions and just the actual muscle bellies themselves. And that's why, like, for instance, men's open guys can be men's open because their muscle bellies are just so fucking round. Like they get fucking huge. Like biceps, for instance, there's so much that goes into just having good biceps, short or long head, like the actual muscle bellies themselves, the insertions, where your biceps cut off left and right, like the actual width of them, the length of them, all that plays a big role. So for Derek, it's just his abs just were never, the insertions just aren't there. You can't just like fix that. It's like trying to say you're going to fix your height. You can't just yeah, there's surgery, but you can't really fix it at the end of the day.
I wanted to hang down to my knees. They brought my knees up.
They brought up my knees. I love that clip. It's one of my favorite clips from Family Guy.
Anytime someone mentions height, it's what I reference.
Yeah. I wanted to hang down on my knees. He walks out, super short. They brought up my knees. There are guys who have gotten height surgery. There's one video I saw recently. This guy was like 5'6", and now he's like over 6 foot. And like the way they do is they like shatter your leg bones and like basically tie, like they screw in this fucking rail, and the rail.
Ugh.
Yeah. So like that's been around for a while just because it's for people who have like I think like calcium deficiencies and like have issues actually growing throughout their life. So like you have to get that stuff done. And I've read a story about this one guy who had to do it for like 8 years of his teenage years because like he just would not grow. The rest of his body was growing, but his legs would not grow. So they had to keep shattering his legs and extending that bar to make his body grow. And it was working and it worked, but it's extremely painful. And I think that's kind of what this guy did. And he did grow in height, but like, who knows what that's going to do in your longevity and your overall quality of life. Like, I'm sure his bones will be brittle by the time he's like 60.
Yep.
So he's going to end up like, what's that guy, Mr. Glass or whatever, that like villain. I forget. It was Samuel L. Jackson that played him, but like his bones are so brittle that like falling over, he would break a ton of bones.
Yeah.
That's why he's called Mr. Glass, because his bones were like glass. But anyways, point is, I think that's part of the reason why Derek didn't really get into bodybuilding more was because he just wouldn't be able to place the way that he would want to place.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a lot of what a lot of guys have to come to grips with is if you don't have the genetics for it, you just can't compete. I thankfully have very symmetrical abs, which is great. But I also have my own downfalls. And one of my downfalls is I put all my fat in my lower belly and it makes me look like shit. And that's something I have to work with. Derek can hold off fat really well, it seems. He has pretty good fat distribution. His delts look crazy, but his biggest downfall is just his ab insertions aren't there.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how good or how much he knows about anabolics or diet or training, whatever, you can't fix that. So that's why he always wore stringers. But in that stringer photo, like he looks fucking crazy. His delts are insane.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite poses to do too, where you just hinge your hands like either on your hips or behind your hips, and you just kind of, it's not even a lat spread, you're just like kind of rounding your shoulders.
Like the most muscular.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a most muscular is what that is. But I put my hands in front of me and I push my palms together and
Yeah.
pop my delts out that way, and I flex my chest. That's my most muscular. But yeah, it's called the most muscular. The other ones that guys do is like where they bend over and do this shit.
Yep.
That's the most muscular as well. It just depends on however you want it to do it. Derek's most muscular is putting it on the side. I've never had the genetics for that. Like where I can
Yeah.
put my hands on my hips or my legs and just be able to do that. If I put my hands in front, I feel like it looks a lot better. It's a great pose to really show off your delts. And I look back at like even shortly after I competed, like my delts were just in such a better place. Like that was one of my main things I used to see how lean I was my delts, and like literally seeing the muscle striations even after I competed. I was like, man, I really was. There's no reason I should have been complaining. Like I was like, oh, I'm not as lean as I was like the week going into my show. But then I look back, I'm like, man, I'd be more than happy with that look. Like
Yeah,
I
well,
do not like the way I look now.
the grass is always greener. That's how it's gonna be.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that photo I sent you from was it Ryan Terry, I think?
Yep. Yeah,
Where
yeah.
he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, he said he looked fucking insane, super lean, and he posted it and he said I kept these unedited for a while because at the time I didn't like how I looked. And he said, but I'm posting them now because I'd be more than happy with this physique, and talked about how like, you know, your mind is in a different place when you're competing, and it is true where like because you're going for a particular look, even if you look insane and if you're not where you want to be, you're not going to be happy with where you are.
Yeah.
You know, even though like during prep, I even said to myself, enjoy this. I talked to people and I said, I'm just telling myself to enjoy this because I know later on I'm going to wish I'd still look like this. And it is so fucking true. And I still didn't enjoy it as much as I should have. Like I should have like fucking looked in the mirror and smiled every time I could see all 6 of my abs and like my delt striations and shit. So it's just you live and you learn. But yeah, Derek's got a lot of good content. We got to do a deeper dive into like the cycles he's talked about and stuff like that, so we can have like better examples of what Derek's talked about. But yeah, Derek More Plates, More Dates, great influencer. I think if there's anybody that I think a lot of guys should listen to or watch when it comes to bodybuilding or fitness in general, Derek is one of them.
Yeah.
Derek's one that I highly suggest.
It's a lot of positivity for men and young men too. Like that's a big part of it. So I agree with that.
Yeah, he's very like he's kind of like a lot of like my philosophy behind anabolics just kind of derives a lot from what he says and his opinion stuff. Obviously I have my own anecdotal for like ideas and stuff, but like a lot of what he preaches is less is more, which is always true. Less is more with steroids. You should not be taking them if you're at a younger age, which is 100% true. If you're under the age of like 21, 22, you really shouldn't be taking it. Because one, newbie gains is phenomenal. Newbie gains is borderline anabolic gains. And at the same time, like there's no way you're even remotely close to what your genetics could possibly do if you're 20, 21, before taking anabolics like that. There's no way you're even close to what your natural genetics are possible, or what it's possible for your natural genetics. And he preaches like actually well thought out cycles and shit that he talks about. And then on top of that, like making sure you're taking high quality stuff, you know, ideally going through clinic if you can, stuff like that is a lot of what he preaches. And I preach a lot of similar shit. I do think like doses and stuff like that could vary when we're talking about less is more. You know, taking something oral is going to be harder on your body than something that's injected. But then there's certain things you just really should never inject, even if there is an injectable version, stuff like that. And he also talks about that too. And he talks to like, one of the things that like really stuck with me was like carnitine. This is why I haven't bought carnitine forever. Because when he talked about carnitine being used for weight loss, the bioavailability of ingesting carnitine is like almost fucking nothing. It's like you have to take like 15 grams of carnitine to really even make it like bioavailable within your body. So like injecting it is way better. And this is like something you can just buy online is injectable carnitine. It's like if you're going to be using it for a cut, injectable is just so much fucking better in every single way. You don't need nearly as much to inject in order to make it actually usable by your body, and you don't have to spend a shit ton of money just getting a ton of carnitine to ingest every single day. So like I like how he talks about stuff like that, and he like calls bullshit on like different supplements and whatnot for being underdosed and not remotely bioavailable or just basically useless ultimately. Like he shit on Prime real fucking hard when they first came out. Like the Prime, the electrolyte drink that competed with Gatorade prior to their energy drink. It was just the like their Prime hydration drink.
Yeah.
And he just shit on it. He's like, the reason it tastes so good is because there's fucking nothing in it. He's like, look at Gatorade and Body Armor and like Liquid IV. Like Liquid IV is like arguably the best like hydration drink out there.
I agree.
It's a powder, but he's like, the reason it tastes like shit is because there's so much salt in it for a reason. You're supposed to replenish your salt when you're sweating. That's why it tastes like shit. But all they ever talked about was the flavor and how much is better than everybody else. He's like, yeah, because you're not getting shit out of it. There's no electrolytes. There's no salt. It's like he went into like a full like hour in-depth video. And I think Logan Paul ended up saying something like trashing on him or something. He's like,
oh, yes.
this guy just takes steroids. But yeah, I get that. And like, I get defending it, but also he just like attacked his person, I think. Like he's like talked shit about him. And it's like, that's not what he's saying. He's attacking your product. And even then, you don't even own all of the product. The product is owned by a company and you own like 10% of it. You're just the face.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like a lot of his content. So we'll probably talk about him some more at some point. Probably get into like Andrew Huberman and maybe Greg Doucette. And that'll also tie to Derek. So today I was just talking about what we think about him, and he has our utmost respect.
Hell yeah. All right, everybody.
Appreciate you guys listening. We will see you guys soon. See you guys next week.
Peace.